You're watching Force 13's live streaming service.
You're watching Force 13 live. Nathan's on vacation, so I'm your host, Xavier Burns. I'm filling in. First stream I've done since the Tropical Weather Bulletin when we were covering Hurricane Nicholas here, so glad to be back at this position here. But we are dealing with a developing situation that looks to be potentially serious. Tropical Cyclone Batsirai, which is expected to make landfall in Madagascar in a few days. There are two warnings that are currently in effect. There's a pre-cyclone warning that is in effect for Reunion. There's also a Class 2 warning that is in effect for Mauritius. Going over those two specific warnings real quick. This is the cyclonic kilo pre-alert. This is for Reunion. What it means is that there's a cyclonic event, tropical storm or cyclone, in this case cyclone, that is evolving in the area and may pose a threat to Reunion in the days to follow, with a delay of about 24 to 72 hours. In this situation, you want to be remaining vigilant, keep informed of the evolution of the phenomenon by listening to the bulletins of Meteo-France, press releases from the prefecture, the local press, and you can go to www.meteofrance.re. Do not listen to rumors and do not help spread them on social networks. Follow the official accounts. Note the useful telephone numbers to check the address and telephone number of the shelter closest to their home. Check supplies of food, driving water, and medicine for the coming days. Equip yourself with clean jerry cans, containers made of food contact materials, and not having contained toxic or dangerous products. Make sure you have a battery-operated lamp and radio. Do not expose yourself, and check your home, of course, as well. Sensitive patients are invited to contact the health organizations or associations that follow them. Of course, this is for Reunion with a delay of 24 to 72 hours. And then, of course, the Class 2 warning that is in effect for Mauritius means that winds of 120 kilometers per hour are expected to reach the island within the next 12 hours. So if you are in Mauritius or you're in Reunion, you need to be making sure that your preparations are making that completion at this point. Going into the cone real quick as to the system, this is the latest one from Meteo-France. And you can see that they are expecting this to make landfall between the 5th and 6th, though this would be a weekend landfall. Saturday would be the date. And you can see it is expected to slow down a little bit, which is a bit concerning given the fact that that would mean more flooding would be a possibility with this. So that's going to be something that we're watching here. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center also has a cone on this, and you can see their cone here. Their cone goes up to 12Z on the 5th, which would of course be Saturday, having landfall south of Tuamasina, or Sina. And you can see as of right now, they do have this peaking as a Category 3. Once more, it is down to 85 miles an hour by the Meteo-France at this moment. That is 120 or 130 kilometers per hour, one of those two. But yeah, strengthening is expected as it passes north of Mauritius and La Réunion, and it is expected to make a little bit of a northward turn, so that way it goes from moving from west-southwest towards the west, and we could see a little bit of a southward jog as it closes in on its landfall. But regardless, we're looking at a pretty significant situation here. The conditions that have been not allowing it to intensify the last few days are going to be easing up, so that will allow this thing to reach a greater intensity once more. Once again, here it is on satellite. Of course, Meteo-France, Meteo-Satellite, I should say, doesn't have the best satellite in the world, but they are expected to get a new one soon. And that is where I'll open it to the two people that we have with us. We have Lucas Gonzalez and we have John Shateen. Both of us are with us tonight to cover the latest on the storm, and this is your first stream with me hosting at the very least. So, what are your thoughts on Batsarai at this current moment?
Right now, it seems all over the place. It seems like
We got mic issues with you.
Hey, let me fix that. Can you take over the look?
In the meantime, if you have any questions to get us through this hour, feel free to send us a message. Another thing I'd like to note while we wait for those mic issues to be fixed is that there is a new storm in the southern hemisphere, that is Tropical Cyclone 9P, which formed in the Coral Sea earlier. It is expected to intensify steadily throughout the next 5 days, and it could pose a threat to New Caledonia and some of those islands north of it, although it doesn't seem like tropical storm force winds will be approaching that island at the time. Most of it will be to its northeast. As of right now, the forecasted peak has it going up to 55 knots, that's 65 miles an hour. Any future for that is a little bit uncertain. Going into the models, we go to our trusty friend, Tropical Tidbits, and you can see what we're looking at here. With Batsarai, you can pretty much see that we're looking at a landfall definitely on Madagascar at this point. All the models go towards it within the next 120 to 168 hours, depending on how fast it moves by that point. And those pinker colors are indicated a pretty strong system. After that, it's all dependent on how much it weakens, on how much it re-strengthens in the Mozambique channel. Some have it going back south and not harming anywhere else, but some have it continuing to go on that westward path, so that's going to be something we have to watch after it makes landfall. So, very interesting situation we're dealing with. We saw a pretty late start to the southwestern Indian Ocean season, but it does not mean that the activity or the threats are any less. Of course, we say this with any kind of northern hemisphere season. It only takes one. The same can be said for the southern hemisphere, because as we all know, no two cyclones are the same. We're always going to see a different outcome with every different storm. Did you get your mic issues fixed, and would you like to say something if that's the case?
Yeah, as I was saying before, is this better?
Yep, it is.
Alright. I was saying before, it seems that Batsarai, seems, I don't know, it's trying to strengthen, but right now the wind shear and the um and the dry air seems to get to it, so it makes it hard for it to strengthen as much as it can. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, we're definitely going to be seeing that intensification. The storm has been an interesting one to track. I mean, it's formed, it then explosively intensified from tropical storm to Category 2 in a matter of hours. Then it weakened some, back down quite a bit, re-strengthened to Category 2 or 3, and then it has since leveled off as a Category 1 for right now. And that's what we've been dealing with for the last bit here. But here we are, we're going to be seeing a third intensification phase from this, where it will be reaching its third peak. Whether it's its strongest is to be determined, but regardless, it is going to be a pretty big threat for Madagascar, depending on where it makes landfall. And those there, especially if you're on the central portions of the country, really need to be watching this system closely. You have about 5 days before this approaches you, so if you are watching us from Madagascar, you really need to be looking at this closely. I'll take a look into the model so you get an idea of what we could be looking at from this. Before I do get to that, let me look at the other things that we got. Of course, 9P, that is going to be going towards the east-southeast and then moving to the southeast and potentially making a curve down south, which is to be expected for this kind of location here. So nothing out of the norm there. In terms of the Solomon Islands, they could be seeing impacts from this. Those are probably the areas that are going to be seeing impacts. New Caledonia might see some rainfall for it, but it doesn't seem that they're going to be getting the tropical storm force winds unless it passes south of them. What else we have? We have Invest 90S that was recently designated, and it's got quite the interesting track. It's that out there, it's to the east of Batsarai in the southwestern Indian Ocean, and it looks like it's going to be doing a horseshoe style track over the next few days. That was the GEPS ensembles. The GEFS ensembles are even more of a cluster and don't really provide much of a picture. So it's going to be about 6 days before we know the general track of things there, because it seems that everything is well with that one. There's also Invest 99S that is currently inland Australia that could come out into the Timor Sea, and we could see some development there as it moves westward. So that is also another invest. So we're getting into the peak of Southern Hemisphere season, and it's definitely showing with the systems that we currently have active at this time here. And then here we are. Let me get the newest microwave imagery real quick, if this works here. You can see that eye is definitely becoming more apparent, and we're starting to see that trend for intensification once more. So that is going to be something. We watched that came out about an hour and a half ago. So things have probably changed a little bit since then. There are a few questions, so we'll get to that. Microwave showing the eyeball closed off again. Thoughts? That is pretty much what I just went over. Definitely is a sign that those conditions are starting to ease off that have been causing it to weaken some. Let's see here. If 9P is named, what name will it get? Well, the next South Pacific name would be, pretty sure it's Dovey if we already had Cody, right?
Cody already happened.
Yeah, so that would be Dovey next up. Alright, so Dovey is up next for the South Pacific, if 9P does get named. Unless it forms in that weird region, and then it would get an Australian name, but that's all confusing sometimes. Any other questions? Feel free to tag us at Force13. That will pop our name up in orange, and that will allow us to see your questions a lot easier, and we'll be able to cover that much more efficiently. In the meantime, we'll go back to the satellite imagery of this with the power of Meteo-Stat 8. And you can see it's definitely getting its act together now. Seen a little bit open to the southwest, but that is definitely filling back in, indicating that we are starting to see that stabilization end and the intensification phase begin once more. Looks like it's done leveling off, and we could see it strengthen back to Category 2 in the next 12 to 24 hours. That is something we're going to be watching. Another thing that we're going to be watching is the fact that once this does reach its peak intensity, we are going to be seeing eyewall replacement cycles associated with the cyclone that may cause it to expand its wind field, and that is going to be causing its impacts to be more widespread. So that is why all of those in Madagascar are encouraged to watch Batsarai, just so that way they know what's going on. Because, of course, if you're here and we're expecting landfall here, you could be seeing some rain and maybe that's it. But if it ends up taking that northward one that model suggests, the impacts would be far worse. And then if it takes that southerly track, you really wouldn't be seeing anything at all, maybe except for some clouds. So the track is going to be very determined. We're still about 5 days out, so there's quite a bit of uncertainty as to where in Madagascar it's going to be making landfall. But at this point, we have come to the conclusion it is making landfall in Madagascar. In regards to questions, what month is peak during the Southern Hemisphere season? Pretty much, I'd say January through early March would probably be the peak of it. Or, well, late January into early March would probably be what would be considered the peak of Southern Hemisphere season based off of what I've seen.
Yeah, I don't follow the Southern Hemisphere as much, so your guess is as good as mine.
I've just pulled up the Mauritius radar, and you can't really see much, but you can see some of the outer bands from what it seemed to be Batsarai there. Hopefully I'm right on that, but it is expected to get a little bit closer. Just a reminder that no landfall is expected on Mauritius or Reunion. However, there are 2 warnings that are currently in effect, and the warnings are at the bottom of your screen and what they mean. So if you need to be referring to those, feel free to do so. Another question: possible strength for Batsarai's Madagascar landfall. As of right now, it's looking like it's going to be at Category 2 or 3 at landfall. However, if it strengthens further, a Category 4 landfall can't be ruled out. We did release a cone earlier. I think it was during the morning hours, my time, late hours, Madagascar time, and that did indicate the potential for a Category 4 landfall after the 5-day period. So that is something we're going to have to be watching here as we head into the weekend. The weekend is going to be a very long weekend for Madagascar, to say the very least. It will disappear overnight like another storm last year. That's not going to be the case this time. Let me pull up an idea of what we're going to be seeing in terms of conditions here ahead of this storm. That way you get an idea of why that's probably not going to be likely. They have changed this site.
We have another question from Slayer. Do you think Batsarai will get an I? I honestly kind of think it won't, because
It's already got one on microwave.
This year, though.
It's already got one on microwave.
Yeah, we were just showing it. It has an eye right now.
Oh, really? I didn't see it. I'm looking on the Windy and the Zoom Earth satellites.
Yeah, that's not exactly the best thing to use. As I was saying, this is the latest model diagnostic for Batsarai. One of these days I get this pronunciation right. And you can see how it's leveled off in intensity. You've had its two distinct peaks. The first one that we saw on January 27th, and the second one that we had between the 30th and 31st. Wind shear has been getting into the moderate sector for the last few days, but it seems that during the 3rd and 4th is when we really start to see that subside a bit. Sea surface temperatures are going to be remaining around the same, and then we see the relative humidity values start to increase on the 3rd and 4th as well. So conditions really get better as we head into the 4th and 5th, and that's probably going to be where we see that the worrying signs of this possibly intensifying. But the problem is, you can see that there's not a lot of confidence about where it's going to be intensifying. In fact, a lot of the models have it really stabilizing around the same intensity between Category 1 and Category 2, potentially Category 3 for the next 2 days, or 4 days to be honest. CTCX, of course, being the outlier, having this randomly weakened down to a tropical storm before shooting up to Category 5. Please don't take that model into consideration. That is a definite outlier. And then, of course, the track models, which are also pretty much confirming what I said earlier. Everything is forecasting a category, at least a Category 2 landfall on Madagascar at this moment here.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Category 2. I think Category 5 would be a little bit too far-fetched.
We have another question from Cat 5 Moment Lull. What are you putting 90S chances of forming? Because he has it at 10%.
So we made a change a few months ago, and this was that we'd no longer be making our own personal chances in terms of tropical cyclone development, and that we'd be using officials. As of right now, Meteo-France has a medium chance of formation in regards to 90S. And it's been an area of interest that's been watched for quite a bit now, so I guess that would lead me to take a look at the models once I get the next few questions.
Is 90S the one in Australia?
No, 90S is the one that's in the southwestern Indian Ocean. 99P is the one that is in Australia.
Oh, okay. I just forgot. I mean, I just looked on the satellite, and it doesn't have any convection at all.
Well, that's going to happen when a storm's completely inland in the desert.
What do you mean by that?
99P is currently located inland at the moment.
I'm talking about 90S.
Oh, 90S is, well, it only just got invested today. Of course, it's not going to look the best.
Yeah.
Let me look at more questions that we have here. Water temperatures for Batsarai and 9P. I can take a look at that real quick. I think as long as I still have the site, I haven't used that site in a while because I haven't been looking at the tropical weather bulletins. That's the wrong site. Give me a second as I try to get that right. There we go. And that's not it either. Well, I guess we'll work with this. The sea surface temperatures around where Batsarai are currently above average compared to normal. The actual sea surface temperatures for the region seem to be around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius, which is more than enough conducive for tropical cyclone development. So pretty good sea surface temperatures. In regards to 9P, that's in 28 to 29, and it looks like it'll be going into cooler waters around this point. So it looks like there won't be much more strengthening after the day 5 point, more than likely.
90S is definitely over a little bit cooler waters than where Batsarai is.
Yeah, let me look at that real quick. 90S, that is around 27 to 28 degrees Celsius water, so only a degree shy of the level that Batsarai is, but really not much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. Alright, let's continue on with the questions. How would you join the team? Well, we have a Discord server. If you're 13 or older, you can join discord.gg/force13. Join the public server, get to know us, and that will probably get you a spot on the contributor team. You can also contact at force13.com. That's pretty much how you can get in contact with us. But the best thing to do, just that way we get to know you, join the public server on Discord. It's free. You can pretty much do something about that one. What did the models say about 90S? Can it become a tropical cyclone? Well, I think this will be the perfect time because I have had multiple model-related things. So let's take a look here at the models. We'll skip over to the southwestern Indian Ocean real quick. And that is where we will look at the models. So this is where what it's initializing at. You can see Batsarai in here, and our newest Invest 90S over here. 99P can also be seen over here. So it just looks like we get to see the aspect for 3 of the storms. GFS pretty much has 99P going inland rather than out to sea, so that is an interesting development there. There's also 976 millibars, so it looks like the GFS has a weakening from its initialization here. But it does have it strengthening as it passes north of Mauritius and Reunion, bringing some rain from its bands there. And then we see some more strengthening. 940 millibars seems to be the peak that the GFS takes it to before it makes landfall around 18Z on Saturday. We can also see that GFS does develop 90S into a tropical cyclone as well. And then afterwards, as we get into the more unreliable range, you can see Batsarai emerge into the Mozambique Channel as 90S begins its extratropical process. And then we could see a potential secondary landfall. Keep in mind, this is not for sure yet. This is not a forecast or anything. It's just an acknowledgement for those that are in Mozambique or anywhere surrounding the Mozambique Channel that they also got to be watching this system closely, as this does have the potential to impact them later on. This is one model, and it's not set in stone that this is going to be the scenario that plays out, but regardless, we are going to be seeing landfall somewhere in Madagascar from Batsarai. Going into the South Pacific real quick, that way you can see what it does with our other invest that we have, not our tropical storm rather, 9P. You can see it gets a little bit stronger, 995 or 991 millibars. Never mind, it keeps strengthening. 985 down to 979 seems to be the peak before it begins to weaken. And it looks like the remnants could impact New Zealand, but at that point it's hour 270, so take that with a massive grain of salt. And then, of course, the GFS tries to develop as another storm, but regardless, that's in the way too far out territory. Just checking up in the other basins while we're still at it. Southeast Pacific doesn't look like there'll be anything in the next 120 hours. That is to be expected. In the Western Pacific, does not seem that there'll be anything from the GFS, at least in the next 120 hours. And there should be no point checking the Atlantic given the fact that it's dead. It should be dead. It's February. And the same should be said for the Eastern Pacific. And last but not least, the Central Pacific has nothing going on either. Going into the ensembles, at least for these Batsarai here. That way you get an idea of what all the models are individually saying. This is around hour 114, so 12Z Saturday. You can see the possible locations, each red number indicating where one of the ensembles has the center of the storm being. Of course, you have scenarios where it's still a few hundred miles away from land. You have some that take it over to the closer to the northern part of it, and some that pretty much go towards the southern half of it. And then you have some of those models that really develop a 90S. So that is something that we're looking at here. After we see the landfall, it's a little bit of uncertainty because there are some that have it slowing down to the point that we don't see a landfall until Monday. And if that's the case, we will be dealing with a very significant rainfall situation if these ensembles verify. Now, if it does cross through Madagascar and we see it re-emerge into the Mozambique channel, then we're going to have to worry about a re-strengthening because models on the ensembles are definitely keen on this re-intensifying once this does emerge, but the question becomes whether it takes that southward track, goes south and turns extratropical, or whether it's going to dive right into land once more. That is a question that remains pretty substantial at this point, but many of the ensembles have decided that it wants to take that run. Seems that 90S is going to be something that isn't too big of something to worry about. Maybe moderate to strong tropical storm at best at the moment from what I'm seeing here. Looking at the other side of the ensembles, the JTWC ensembles, that way we get from two sides here. You can see that the speed of the storm is still in question here, and that is going to be telling it all about how much rainfall is to be expected from the storm. Once it makes landfall, the big question remains whether it continues onwards or whether it goes southwards. The JPS has a weaker scenario in terms of everything, so their scenarios are much more widespread, so take that with a grain of salt. But regardless, as I have mentioned and reiterated several times, Madagascar, you need to be watching this very closely. It is pretty much 100% certain at this point that Batsarai will be making landfall somewhere on the island. So that's pretty much a look on the models there. I'll briefly go into 9P so that we get another perspective on the other storm that we have active, and really the ensembles aren't really doing much with it, so nothing too big there. Doesn't look like it's going to be too threatening of a storm, besides some potential rain showers and gusty winds that could happen in Solomon Islands. Okay, that was another. Hopefully that cleared up some of those who wanted a look at the models. Going over to some of the questions that we got since. 99S is sweating over Western Australia because of high temperatures over the last few days. Yes, I know Australia has a tendency, given the fact that it is summer there. Can this cyclone still move right over Maurice? Are you talking about 99S? I just want to make sure that I am getting things right because we have 4 different systems that are currently active right now.
I'm not 100% sure either.
Hence why I'm asking the live chat, just to see what they are referring to, so that way we can keep it up. Just keep in mind, we still have 30 minutes on the air, so if you have any questions, please be sure to give us a heads up, tag us at Force13, and we will be able to respond to your question or comment. We had another question here. How strong do you think Batsarai will get before it hits Madagascar? If it does, well, it's no longer a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it is probably going to be between Category 2 and 3. That's my guess based off of the official forecast and what the models have gone with. But really the big concern is the speed of this, because that's not only going to determine what we see in terms of strength, but it's going to determine what we see in regards to the rainfall. A slower storm would bring a whole lot more rainfall, a faster storm would bring less, but of course we still have different threats for each speed, so still something that we got to be looking out for no matter what. But unfortunately, the GFS is taking one of the worst situations that you can have in general, given the fact that they want to take it as a 940 millibar low into Madagascar, and then taking it as a major into nearly the capital of Mozambique, which is just it's not something that we really are hoping for at all here. the southwestern Indian Ocean has recently woken up. It started off late, but it is definitely proving that it has come back, sprung to life, and we're seeing it go back to what it normally does. So that's really going to be something that we have to watch in the coming days here, as this season is really getting into its peak here.
Yeah, I think it just proves to show you, no matter what basin, once it hits peak season, things can pick up real quick.
Yeah, definitely.
I honestly hope it doesn't become a major over Mozambique.
No, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah,
That makes me think of Cyclone Die.
Yeah, Cyclone Batsirai is a very nasty storm that we did definitely covered a lot here with Force 13, and that really dealt a massive blow to Mozambique. Massive rainfall, significant flooding as a result. I mean, it was not a fun storm to be dealing with. There was a humanitarian crisis. I mean, 1,300 plus that were killed. I mean, from that thing. Not saying this is going to be a repeat of that, but the tracks, of course, are completely different, given the fact that Adai was primarily in the Mozambique Channel for all of its life on water. But like I said, speed is going to be everything, and we don't know what's going to happen in the Mozambique Channel yet. The best we can do at the moment is go off what is supposed to happen and forecast Madagascar's landfall first. Get people in the know about what's going to happen in Madagascar, because there's still a lot of uncertainties as to where it's going to make landfall in Madagascar. So if there's still a lot of uncertainties as to where Madagascar is going to landfall, we're definitely not going to have any good clue about what's going to happen afterwards, especially given the fact that there's a wide array of possibilities that could end up occurring from this system.
Are they still talking about possible stalling over Madagascar?
I wouldn't say stalling. I know there's the potential for it to move slowly, but there's really nothing that has indicated the potential for just flat out stalling. Seems that one way or another it will be crossing Madagascar and going into the Mozambique Channel, so it's just a matter of when and how fast it gets through there, pretty much.
Okay.
While Xavier, while you were explaining about the models, there was this question I saw in the chat that I honestly didn't feel like explaining while you were explaining because I didn't want to interrupt you. But somebody said, "Is Batsarai a threat to Mauritius?"
Well, Maurice is expected to be seeing impacts from this. They are currently under a Class 2 warning at the moment, which means that within the next 12 hours there will be winds of 120 kilometers an hour that are possible through the island, and that is pretty substantial. So, yes, Mauritius, you are going to be seeing impacts from this. La Reunion, you're under a pre-cyclone warning as well, so you're also going to be getting impacts from this. You're not going to be getting the worst of the impacts from this storm, considering the fact that Madagascar likely will, but you're still going to be seeing some pretty potent impacts overall. Let's see what else.
Another question. Will this storm help with the drought conditions in Madagascar? And honestly, I did not know that there were drought conditions in Madagascar.
Well, when you introduce a whole bunch of rain, that's usually not a good way to help a drought. I mean, we've seen this in other examples, like the west coast of the United States, that is well known for its expansive and long-lasting drought. And we had a rainstorm that came in a few months ago, and that was a lot of rain in an area that was not meant to supply and hold a lot of rain, because, of course, getting rain is one thing, but when you're introducing a whole bunch of rain to a dry environment, that leads to flooding a lot faster. So if we're going to be seeing a whole bunch of rain, combine that with a drought, and you really have a really bad combo as a result.
Yeah, especially within a 24-hour period. I just seen that question too, and I was about to say that.
Indeed.
So yeah, I mean, I really can't stress this enough about the threat that we're looking at from this. So please, if you're in Madagascar, if you have any questions, and you are watching us from Madagascar, please let us know what your current thoughts are, what your current questions are. We do want to get to all of these, as we will be live throughout this entire week, and then of course we'll be here for the weekend. Nathan may be gone on vacation, but the grind continues in terms of what we do here at Force 13. Doesn't mean that we stop covering tropical cyclones just because one person is gone. So, may have to get used to my voice for the week, but it's just a part of us doing what we do here, covering tropical cyclones that pose threats. And we are seeing a significant one with Batsarai that has lasted several days at this point and will last several more. And then of course we'll have our Twitter at Force13. That's going to be coming out with quite a few graphics between cones, between tropical weather outlooks, between our situation reports, which basically give a little overview of what the current intensity and information on the storm is. As we get closer to the landfall, we'll be getting out key message graphics. So all that stuff you can find by following us at Force13 on Twitter. That will give you some insight and some more real-time updates when we're not on the air.
And don't forget to follow Force 13 on Facebook as well.
Yes, definitely. Let's see what else we have in terms of questions. For our team, what preparations should Mauritius and Reunion be doing at this time? At this point, I'd be saying anything that applies to anything with the tropical cyclone, make sure you have enough supplies. At this point, Mauritius and Reunion are kind of running out of time here. So hopefully they have made their preparations as the warnings have come out. But needless to say, make sure you have food that's stocked up. Make sure that any family that you have that is in Mauritius, Reunion, or in the path of Batsarai know about this storm, know that it's coming. Be prepared for power outages. That's definitely going to happen in a situation like this. If you live right next to the coast or an island, be prepared for storm surge, of course. In Madagascar, you still have a bit to watch, so my advice to you at the moment, watch the situation very closely. I would recommend getting any supplies you need, whether it's food, canned food, of course, any non-perishable goods, pretty much, would be your best bet. Make sure you have food that will last you probably 2 weeks in the event that the cyclone causes enough damage that getting around is extremely difficult, of course. Pretty much this is one of those situations where you watch and evaluate for the next day or two, and then your time to really start acting will definitely be on Wednesday and Thursday for Madagascar. If you're in Reunion or Mauritius, your time is pretty much now and closing, as we're starting to see those rain bands get closer and closer to those two islands.
There's a question asking, is Batsarai kind of unpredictable?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's unpredictable. In terms of its intensity, it's been unpredictable, but in terms of its general track, it's been following what we expected it to do, but the only question from here on out is really just how strong is it going to get, and the question is how fast is it going to go as we get closer to Madagascar, especially between those different solutions. We have a general idea of the track, because we've confided that a landfall is 100% going to happen at this point. It's just a matter of pinning down where and what time. Is it going to be on Saturday morning? Is it going to be on Saturday afternoon? Could it be not until Sunday night, as some of the ensembles want to go with here? So there's a wide array of possible times that it could make landfall on. It's just a matter of how strong is it going to be and how fast is it going to be. That's going to be really revealing all the crucial details that we need to know. I mean, to be fair, this is kind of what we expected for this time of the storm's life cycle, given the fact that any time we're looking at landfall, when it's over 5 days out, which this is, we're still looking about another 5 days before it makes landfall. There's still a lot of things that need to be filled together, and we're very prone to seeing changes to the forecast between the intensity, between the landfall location, pretty much between what forecasted impacts we're expecting as a result. So of course there's going to be shifts. There's going to be changes as to what the forecasted peak is going to be. There's going to be quite a few changes that we're going to be expecting as the forecast becomes more clear. So despite the fact that there's going to be changes, it's only going to be helping us get a better picture as to what Batsarai is going to do.
And to add on to that, I think any cyclone can be unpredictable. It really depends on the models.
Well, not just that, it also depends on what we're seeing that's influencing between steering currents, ridging, all that kind of stuff. Helps going into where a cyclone moves. So it's other factors that help contribute to unpredictability. It's not just models, the actual environment that gets represented by models, and the models try to figure out, based off of those environmental aspects, what will happen with the storm. There was another question that we had here, and that was, do you think that Batsarai will intensify when it's closest to Mauritius? Well, it seems that we're starting that intensification trend once more here, so it's definitely seeming likely that we'll see some, at the very least, slow intensification by the time that it gets to there. Someone asked, where is Mauritius? So let me pull this up real quick so that we get an idea of what we're talking about. At least a citywide aspect, city and countrywide.
Hello, Thomas Schwenn.
Oh, hi, Thomas.
Hello, how is everyone?
Hi, Thomas.
Joining us is Thomas Schwenn. What are your current thoughts on Batsarai?
Well, the current thought is the storm is weaker than we were anticipating it to be at the moment. I'm sure that's been discussed on multiple occasions during the stream. Currently a Category 1, winds of 85 miles per hour, pressure of 975, if I have all my numbers right. The storm is currently expected to head towards Madagascar over the next few days. I'm sure that's also been talked about, with tropical storm force winds likely to arrive in Mauritius within the next 48 hours or so, impacting Reunion not long after that. So looks like tropical storm conditions are likely going to impact Mauritius and La Réunion before the storm does head in the general direction of Madagascar when uncertainty explodes a bit. I don't really anticipate the center of this storm getting overly close to Mauritius and Reunion, so when it comes to winds, they aren't going to be overly strong, but they're still going to be substantial. And then when it comes to Madagascar, we're going to have some place in Madagascar getting a very strong and potent tropical cyclone, whether it be a Category 2, 3, or 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. So overall, my thoughts are, if you're in La Réunion, Mauritius, you need to be preparing for some pretty heavy rain and some gusty winds. If you're in Madagascar along the coast, we don't have enough information yet to really say who specifically needs to be preparing, but everyone along the coast of Madagascar, especially on the eastern side, needs to be watching this extremely closely.
Indeed. And honestly, I hope it doesn't become stronger than its first peak at 115 miles per hour and a pressure of 957. But the forecast saying that it's going to be a mid-range Category 3 at its initial peak, though, right before landfall in Madagascar.
Yeah, that's definitely concerning for sure.
Very.
I hope that's not going to happen.
I mean, of course, we're still trying to figure out how fast it's going to be going to Madagascar. I mean, that's still the big question here, because we already know that the rainfall is going to be pretty significant associated with this, but the speed of where Batsarai, or how fast Batsarai moves, is going to be the thing that determines how much rain we're going to be seeing. And the slower it moves, the rainfall amounts we're going to be seeing are going to be a lot higher if it moves slow. And that's why I'm kind of concerned, because you have some models or ensembles that want the landfall on Saturday, and then you have a few of the ensembles that want to keep it moving towards Madagascar until Monday. That is a 48-hour time gap, and that is just not something that we like to see this far out.
That's for sure. Oh, go on.
Got a question. How much will the Madagascar terrain affect the storm?
So it depends on how the storm moves. Assuming that the storm rides the coast of Madagascar, it will certainly cause some weakening, as most land interaction does, but it won't be overly impactful. Um, if this moves into Madagascar, that kind of mountainous terrain that you get in Madagascar will cause weakening to occur pretty quickly.
I'm also looking at the GFS, GFS, and they're looking for a landfall in just north of Mach 6, or what is it called in Mozambique? It's spelled Maxixe. What is it called?
I believe that's Mexique.
Yeah. They're expecting a landfall in that region at Mozambique with a pressure of 950 millibars.
Definitely a possibility. That's quite long range. We're certainly seeing right now indications that after this moves through Madagascar, it's going to be capable of re-strengthening. But we definitely don't have the forecast confidence to be getting into specific locations just yet. With stuff like that, but we can certainly say that there will probably be some sort of redevelopment once it passes in the Mozambique Channel. Everyone along the Mozambique Channel, just have your guard up at this point. There's not really any reason to make any preparations. We don't even know that it's going to get all that strong yet. But after this does move through Madagascar, there is in fact that risk that this does begin to move towards places like Mozambique. So we'll see what ends up happening. But Madagascar, Rodrigues, La Reunion and Mauritius are the main places. I believe this is past Rodrigues pretty much at this point. You don't really have to worry about this storm if in Rodrigues at this point. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Rodrigues is pretty much in the clear in terms of strong winds. I could see a heavier rainfall band or two. You're enough within the influence of this that this could produce some rain for you, but this is not going to be a major threat for you, like it certainly could be for Mauritius and La Reunion.
Definitely.
And the GFS is expecting a peak intensity of 940 millibars. Do you have any thoughts on that?
940 millibars, I'd assume that's going to be before the Madagascar landfall that we're talking about,
Yeah,
right? 940 millibars. I mean, that's an indicator that you're going to have a storm that's filled with energy. The first thing that means is that this has a lot of moisture that's going to be suspended in the air. When you have storms this strong, it's going to mean there's going to be a lot of rainfall. The winds are also going to be strong. The storm is going to get larger, so the actual maximum wind speed won't be super high, but it's still going to be substantial. I mean, we're looking at a category 2 or 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale and possibly a 4 if everything goes wrong. We'll just have to see.
Possibly low range Cat 4, probably
Yes.
130.
Yeah, we'd definitely be looking at a lower end, 130 miles an hour, 1 minute sustained. That would be for sure.
I do want to cut in briefly here because we did get a new cyclone warning bulletin for Mauritius. This came out. The Class 2 cyclone warning that is in effect holds. And what they're saying from this new bulletin is that the latest observations indicate that Tropical Cyclone Batsirai has slowed down for the past few hours and continues to move west-southwestward. They say that the pressure at the center of the cyclone is estimated around 965 HPA, and the gusts near the center are 200 kilometers an hour. At 4 o'clock this morning, Tropical Cyclone Batsirai was centered about 600 kilometers northeast of Mauritius. It's moving west to southwestward at a direction of around 10 kilometers an hour, as previously mentioned, west-southwestward. So on this trajectory, Cyclone Batsirai will be approaching Mauritius and represents a potential threat to the island. There is a risk that the track will curve more towards the southwest, which would bring the center of the cyclone closer to the Mascarene Islands. In terms of what is expected there, they say that the public in Mauritius is advised to complete all preliminary actions. The weather will be partly overcast to cloudy with temporary showers, especially in the east, south, and on the central plateau, more frequent in the afternoon. A marked deterioration in the weather is forecast for the evening local time. The wind will blow from the southeast at a speed around 45 kilometers an hour with gusts up to 90 in exposed regions. The wind will strengthen further this evening to gusts around 100 kilometers an hour. So that is some pretty gusty winds there. The seas will also be strong with swells of 4 to 5 meters. Sea trips are not recommended. They have also said that the next bulletin will be issued at 10 a.m. Mauritius time, so that will be 6 hours from now. So some pretty interesting things to look at there from that bulletin. The conditions are going to be deteriorating for Mauritius, and of course, them strongly discouraging any kind of sea travel as a result.
Indeed.
Yeah, that is for sure. I would like to note something about Meteo-France's latest cone. I'm sure that's been shown multiple times. The rapid weakening anticipated by Meteo-France after this moves into Madagascar is absolutely remarkable. They're showing this storm in very short order, moving into Madagascar and going from a severe tropical cyclone all the way to a depression in one forecast point. So definitely something to note for sure. My goodness.
Yeah. When was the last Cat 4 to landfall in Mauritius?
I'm not sure actually.
I'm going to say a die.
Adai was Mozambique.
That was Mozambique. We're talking about the island. So there are a couple of islands outside of
Mauritius.
Madagascar. It's on the eastern side. Mauritius is the eastern island. It's west of Rodrigues, east of La
I thought it was
Reunion.
Mozambique. My bad.
Oh, good. This
And
could make a
honestly-
very close pass.
Honestly, I don't know what is the last Cat 4 landfall in Mauritius.
I can check here. When it comes to last notable storm here in the 2010s, we had, let's see here. We had Category 2, Cyclone Jonah, I believe that's how it's pronounced. Let's see.
Jonina?
Yeah, Jonina. We had Haley, which apparently, no, not Haley, I'm sorry. It was the G name in 2019. That's Galena. Yeah,
Galena.
Jonina, Galena. And Galena, yeah, that was close. That was a Category 4 that rammed into Rodrigues.
J-Dog says that Batsarai is absorbing energy from the northwest.
While we're waiting to see what it was, if you have any last minute questions, we will be wrapping up here in the next 5 minutes. So if you would like to get those in, this would be the time before we do head off. We will be back for more live coverage, of course, at the same time tomorrow night.
And also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and join our Discord server today.
Yep, all that stuff is on the bottom.
Yeah, those kinds of things are helpful. You'll be able to get latest updates from us. We do these an hour a day with question and answer stuff. We also post video updates here. Those are very useful. I believe that we have one coming up in 2 hours' time. 1 hour time, actually. And then we also have some stuff that'll be coming out, like situation reports, stuff like that. You'll be seeing those on our social media. So we're going to continue to update people as the situation does continue to progress. But I think the biggest thing, at least right now for me, is that Mauritius and La Reunion, you guys have a rough next little while. Looks like that could be coming up for you. This storm's going to make a close approach. You're definitely going to be getting tropical storm force winds, to say the least. Regardless of what does end up happening, heavy rainfall is going to be a concern for you. And when I talk heavy rainfall, we're talking significant amounts. I'm talking over, I'd say even 400 millimeters in some cases. Let me just double check that I got this right. 200 millimeters, my bad. 200 or more millimeters of rain are definitely possible on both of those islands. So some flooding, mudslides, things like that are definitely going to be of concern with time. But Mauritius, La Reunion, Madagascar, the major places that need to watch as this tropical cyclone does near. It's expected to strengthen with time. as it does move towards the general direction of Madagascar. And, while the maximum winds definitely will not be hitting Mauritius or La Réunion unless this takes the very southern side of things, if you're in Madagascar on the East Coast, anywhere along the East Coast, you need to be watching this closely in case things do change.
And also, I hope people in the Mozambique channel is watching just in case, even though the GFS is predicting a 950 millibar peak in the Mozambique channel. But things change though, and honestly, I hope the people at Mozambique will be watching as well, along with the people at Madagascar, Mauritius, and La Réunion.
Yeah, Madagascar is the more immediate threat. La Réunion and Mauritius aren't going to be seeing landfall, but they're definitely going to be seeing those gusty winds and heavy rainfall. Madagascar is going to be seeing a landfall. It's just a question as to where and when. And then after that, its future becomes a lot more uncertain, whether it goes south on the Mozambique channel, whether it survives, or whether it falls apart, or whether we see re-intensification and we see something that hits the Mozambique area. There's a lot of questions about what happens after Madagascar, but the primary focus at the moment is tracking the storm and forecasting what it does up to Madagascar and what we are looking at for impacts for that island. Other than that, that's really the best we can do at the moment, given the fact that there's still quite some uncertainties with that aspect at the moment. So we'll focus more on getting you guys prepared if you're watching from those areas before we do shift our worry to areas in Mozambique as well.
And also joining us, who just joined the stream, probably at the worst possible time, is Ethan. Hello to you.
Hello, Ethan.
Welcome to the last 2 minutes of the stream, Ethan.
Oh, it ends in 2 minutes?
Yeah, you joined at the worst possible time, dude.
Well, what's your thoughts? We'll just wrap up with final thoughts here then. Ethan, what are your thoughts on Batsarai then?
This storm looks garbage, and supposedly the JTWC are forecasting 110 knots, which I don't know if I buy. Let me have a look at RAM real quick.
105 knots. No,
No,
110 in the brand new. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. 110 knots.
110 is a little bit high, I'd say. But that's just me, of course. Anyway, this one was like garbage. End of story.
Thank you for your insightful contribution. Thomas, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I think that Ethan kind of summed up the storm's current appearance. It's not looking that good, but I want to make it clear that does not mean you should let your guard down. The storm still remains dangerous, it still remains potent, and it still remains powerful. 85-mile-per-hour winds are no joke right now, and as this moves towards places like Mauritius and La Réunion, they're going to be receiving tropical storm force winds from this system. It's nearly a guarantee at this point. Tropical storm force winds are going to be something to consider. Rainfall, heavy rainfall, is also going to be something to consider, with 200 or more millimeters of rain expected to fall on both islands. Some storm surge, while minor, could also be a factor while this storm does strike both of those areas. So make sure that you're making preparations, getting things like food, water, stuff like that, just in case travel is difficult. Things like that, just to ensure that you are safe during the system. This isn't the time to batten down the hatches. This isn't going to be one of those things where you're going to be getting absolutely rammed into by a major cyclone or something like that, at least if current trends hold. Madagascar, on the other hand, you guys have to be watching this way more closely on the eastern side of things, eastern coast in particular. Significant rainfall is expected, and we're talking about, especially in more mountainous regions, some rainfall over, just let me get the conversion here, that could be over 400 millimeters of rain in some spots. So that's going to be significant for sure. You need to be preparing as if over 400 millimeters of rain could be falling, and this could be a Category 3 or 4 when it hits. It's going to be no joke, that's for sure. So if you're in Madagascar, you need to be watching. No preparations can be made for a specific area yet because it's a little too far out. But I think as Xavier was saying earlier in the stream here, Wednesday, Thursday, especially Friday, if you hadn't by that point, those are going to be the days when you need to take action and make sure that you are safe as this system does approach Madagascar.
And with that, we will be wrapping up here for the night. Thank you guys for watching, and we hope that those in the path begin to take this storm as very seriously as we hope that we have spread the message to be. With that, we'll be back live here tomorrow night at the same time. It will be early in the morning, tomorrow morning local time for Madagascar and La Réunion and Mauritius there. So Same time tomorrow morning, and we'll see you then.